Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Relationship Mastery Series. Principles to passionate life and relationships and to dynamite families. I'm Alan Darbonne, and I'll be your host for this series. And I've been very fortunate. I've been able to pull together 25 wonderful experts from all over the world. And they're going to share with you their experiences, their stories, the way that they have a sense that they relate to this whole topic of passionate lives and relationships and families, and offer some tips that you'll be able to use. And these are tips that are around, how do you find that relationship? How do you keep that relationship? And then, because we all break it from time to time, whether we mean to or not, how do you repair it and get right back on the road? And then how this all impacts children, if children are involved in the family. Today I'm particularly happy because we get a double treat. We have on the show Priscilla and Greg Hunt. And Priscilla Hunt is the executive director for Better Marriages, and she and her husband, Greg, are certified Better Marriage leader couples and certified Better Marriage specialists in marriage enrichment. They're seminar directors for Prepare Enrich, instructor trainers for couple communication, and trainers for mentoring for better marriages. They've been married for 38 years and have been married or involved in marriage education and enrichment since they said I do in 1976. And just so our audience knows, at the very end of the show, so stick around to the very end, the Hunts are going to offer a wonderful free gift to you. And they'll tell you about that at the end, and I'll let you know how to get to the link to be able to get that free gift. And so I want to welcome you guys. I've been looking forward to this interview and to spend some time with you. I think you have some very special stuff to share. And I'm going to start right out. And one thing I'd love to hear you share is your story about how you guys got together.
This is one of our favorite stories.
It is indeed. We actually sometimes in leading conferences will ask couples for show of hands related to various things, the shortest length of an engagement, the longest, and a variety of things. And one of the questions we ask is there anyone here who was engaged before their first date? And of course, no hands go up, and then ours does, because that's one aspect of our particular story.
Oh, I got to hear this.
We met in the summer of 1975, and we were summer missionaries. Greg was at Baylor University. I was at the University of Houston. And we were put together on an evangelism training team. And so we traveled around the state of Texas to different colleges, universities, churches, that sort of thing. And when we met, we had some complications.
Yeah, we did. I had been dating one person since 8th grade, and I was now at the end of my sophomore year of college. So that's 6 years of a relationship. And it was to the daughter of the pastor back home, and that whole community was very supportive of this ongoing relationship. My parents were, well, everybody they had our futures laid out for us.
But it's a done deal.
Priscilla's was a little stickier even still.
Well, the beginning of that summer, I had an engagement ring on my finger.
Oh, my.
My wedding was scheduled for the very end of the summer.
That summer.
3 months later after we met. And about 2 weeks into the summer, I was looking at this guy and I thought, oh my goodness, am I about to make the biggest mistake of my life? And so my engagement ring came off my finger, went in my pocket, and we were not allowed to date. And so this is how we knew we were going to get married and were engaged before we went on our first date. But my mother back home had one responsibility related to my wedding, and it was to mail the invitations. And so with no commitment from Greg yet, I called my mother and I said, Mom, I don't want you to worry about this. No big deal. But whatever you do, do not mail those invitations.
So by the end of the summer, I mean, we had spent a lot of time together along with one other member of our team. We had a team of 3. And our relationship was really solidified. We had a deep sense of this future we could share together. And we're committed to one another. Before we could formally have our first date, according to the rules of this organization we were a part of for that summer. There were some complications that ensued for both of us, more for me than Priscilla, because she was from a family that was not long on propriety.
Yeah, and you're a man anyway.
Yeah. Mine was. But ultimately, it all worked out. We actually, when you count up the dates now, given the fact that we're now in 2017, we celebrated our 40th anniversary last July. We're moving.
Oh, wow. Congratulations, you guys. That's awesome.
2 kids, 3 grandkids, and we have loved this life we share.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. That's great. Well, you're a shining example for what you've been doing in your work. So that's wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing that. That is I've never heard one quite like that before.
It's all the rules. I mean, there are these if you're looking for the checklist of things you're supposed to do,
right?
Relationship, take your time, and etc. We broke those rules, and it's a reminder that the rules are guidelines, but life brings all kinds of rich variations to the way these stories unfold.
You know, we enjoy asking couples when we meet them, how did they meet?
Uh-huh.
You can just see their faces light up when they get to tell that story. And we're really aware that when couples are hitting a dry patch, or they're not feeling really connected, that if they will just look back and think about those early days and about how they met, what attracted them to each other, what they appreciated and loved in the other person, it really can turn things around.
Yeah, rekindles.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And as you're looking back, sometimes you see all the templates you dropped in there that are not even you, and but they're in there and interfering with you really being to see this beautiful being that's right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about how the two of you guys see your work relating to maintaining passion in relationships and to awesome families.
You know, it really, I think for us, starts with our personal commitment to one another and our desire from the very beginning of our relationship that we would continue to nurture the relationship, keep adventure in the relationship, that we would be lifelong learners, that we would love this relationship enough to nurture it, and for there to be an us that's more than just me or you. It's the us story that we're building together. And so for us, it really started there with that personal passion for our own relationship. I think that beyond that is that that we've wanted to be a people of influence. We have wanted to share our journey in a way that might inspire hope and might motivate others to nourish their relationships as well. And so, gosh, from year one, we've been engaged in marriage education, marriage development, looked for opportunities to keep learning and growing and keeping that spark alive.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, what a wonderful insight for the two of you to recognize that early. I know from my 50 years in this work, I've seen family after family where if that component is in there, where there's something of a commitment to something that's bigger than themselves, there's something that happens energetically that our little egos pale next to that. So the problems are easy to work through, and the kids are standing on the side watching that, and lo and behold, the kids begin to reflect this sense of a passion for something that's maybe beyond themselves. They don't need to forget themselves, not by a long shot, include themselves, but include that kind of commitment to service in some way.
Right.
It is interesting. Greg mentioned we have 2 adult children, and they're both married. And it's interesting now that they are married, their perspective is different, you know, than it was when they were our kids growing up in the house. But they really have an appreciation for the role models that we were for them. And they didn't always get that as kids, especially as teenagers. But now that they are married and they are parents, they're really appreciating those things that they saw in us, being consistent and disciplined, and, you know, doing what you were say you were going to do, and have solidarity between us, so that they always knew that they couldn't run around the, you know, whatever the football term is. They had to, you know, go to both of us. And
yeah.
Difference.
That's right. I mean, that end around move is something that teenagers learn very early, and if they don't get some feedback on that, it goes wild. So that's great, and that's a wonderful thing too. That and we want to put hope out there to all you other guys that have teenagers. You know, they don't look like they're getting it, but they're absorbing more than you think. So
that's right.
Stay your course.
Exactly.
That's true.
Greg, you mentioned the importance of growth in our relationship, and when we're asked the question, you know, what are some tips? And, you know, all of the things that we read and hear are true. To have a weekly date night if you can, to get away overnight at least once a quarter, you know, all of those great tips.
Right.
I would say that from my vantage point, my best tip is to keep growing as an individual, because a lot of times what I see is that people stagnate in their relationship, and a lot of times it's because they have stagnated as individuals. And so if I am personally boring, or I'm in a rut, I'm not growing, I'm not learning, I'm not bettering myself, that's what I bring to the relationship. And so I want to bring something better than that to the relationship. And so if we as individuals can continue to grow and bring that into the relationship, then the relationship can't help but grow.
Right, right. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because so many couples end up kind of getting that wrong, and it goes off on the wrong course, where they kind of think, well, I'm going to give up this or give up that because I'm doing it for my husband, or I'm doing it for my wife. And generally those things you better think about twice, because those are possibly very much a part of what's very attractive about you to your husband or your wife.
Right.
And a lot of times we also see that couples they won't be thinking about themselves growing, but they'll sure be thinking about how their partner ought to be growing. You know, if they would just change this, and if they would just do that, everything would be fine.
Right.
Lessons in our relationship, in fact, was a lesson. I'll own it for myself. Priscilla can own whatever she wants to, but for myself, one of the things I became aware of was, as alluring and lovely, as incredible as Priscilla was to me, there were things about Priscilla that were less than ideal. And I found myself wanting to turn her into a project to help her be what she needed to be. And without even understanding exactly what kind of feedback I was getting, I could experience all kinds of ways that was counterproductive, that by making her a project, I was less happy and satisfied. She was feeling something less than my unconditional love. and it ended up being contradictory in its effect. Instead of it motivating her to grow, it shut her down. And I remember a turning point in our first year of marriage when it dawned on me, not only intellectually, but emotionally, it dawned on me that I loved her unconditionally. And I was able to say that to her, just say very specifically, Priscilla, I love you with all my heart. I consider myself the luckiest man in the world. If you never changed, I would consider myself the luckiest man on earth. I love you just the way you are. And the paradox of that was I was liberated from making her a project. I truly was internally freed myself from that. And the paradox was that when that happened, she was liberated to grow in ways that didn't have to do with me making her a project. It grew out of her own inherent desire for growth.
Yeah, those words were just what I needed, that acceptance and affirmation.
That's it. I mean, that's what we all need, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when it's not there, we feel it, whether we know it or not.
Right.
And it just, I mean, there's no better fertilizer than that to make things grow.
That's right.
Well, I really do think that there is a built-in life growth principle to life, that living things are growing things, and we can afford to trust that. I think the counterpart is we know there are couples that in their growing grow apart because they're allowing their growth to move them on a rail that's increasingly distant from their partner. I think the counterpart to that continual personal growth is that we're doing it while continuing to nurture the growth of our relationship as well, where we're staying in communication with each other, where we're celebrating one another's growth and also finding ways to share in the adventure of life together, so that as that growth takes place, our relationship is being transformed in creative ways, even while our individual life continues to grow.
Right. I couldn't agree more. That's a very, very good point.
Alan, you mentioned that sometimes we think that we have to give up our interests or our hobbies or whatever for the relationship. And, you know, the interesting thing is that Greg and we are very different people. We've been, you know, different people from the get-go, personality and preferences, temperament, family of origin, background, taste in food, you know, everything. We've been so different. But rather than going our separate ways, we have continued to go our direction, but bring the other one with us. And so what has happened for us is that we have really been enriched. And, you know, I'll speak for self. I grew up on a ranch, and my dad was a professional race car driver, and I rode horses. And the night of the afternoon of my senior prom, I was out hunting snakes in the creek bed, you know, with my brothers. Well, Greg grew up in a very refined home.
Suburban, urban, telephone company executive. Our lifestyle was very different from the ranch lifestyle. Moved 11 times in 12 years, and Priscilla stayed in one place the whole time. Yeah, so significant.
So we had very different preferences and interests. And I don't think I had ever been to a museum, an art museum. And rather than kind of buck that and say, oh, I don't do museums, we went to a museum and turned out I loved it. And part of what I loved was, again, getting back to that growth principle, I was learning something new, and I was open to being exposed to something new. And I was doing it with Greg, who really knew how to help me enjoy it. And he loved by being there with him.
Yeah. The counterpart was I didn't have many experiences outdoors. Priscilla's life was full of outdoors. And so we started camping together. There were things, in other words, that the other brought into our relationship that expanded our experience, and being willing to dip our toes into the other person's world ended up enriching our relationship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good example and such a good lesson. you can, I mean, what happens when you unconditionally love and it just becomes a huge discovery? Or if you're unconditionally closed, it's, it's closed, and not much positive happens and not much happiness happens. And I know what you mean. My wife is originally from China. We have entirely different backgrounds, and there's a choice always that when you run up against that, to either resist or try to control something, or to open to it. And it's like, wow, I get an opportunity to have two whole lives here. I can learn all about this other life. What a gift.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
Yeah. There is this other piece that's always, that in all of these things, there's a balance. There are ways we've given each other permission to do the things that are individual passions that we don't share as love. And so some of the things we explore end up moving us off into our own personal interests and terrain, but not in a way that isolates or separates. There's a sense of real loving permission giving there, and an interest in what the other experience is there, even if we're not joining in the experience at the time.
Like this meeting tonight, I think I may let you do that on your own.
Yeah, I've got an involvement in a community, actually an organization that has a local meeting from a global organization, and I'm going to it tonight without Priscilla.
That's my permission. Alan, I had a friend come to me recently. She'd been married 25 years, and she said, I love my husband. I wouldn't leave him for anything, but I don't like him very much. That he's boring. He's a fuddy-dud. He wants to go to sleep early. He doesn't like to do anything. And I'm just not happy. And it occurred to me that attitude is such an important thing.
Oh, gosh.
And I had the idea for her to go home and write down 10 things that she liked about him. Think back, even if you have to think back to, when you were 30 and everything was new and fresh and romantic and all the sparks were there. Just write down those, 10 things. And then when you're ready, share those with him. And she came back the next week and she was so excited because she said, oh my goodness, I'm crazy about him. Who knew? I wrote down 10 things and it just jogged my memory of what I do like about him. And I came up with 20. And then she shared them with him and she said, this week has been great. And it was all right here. It was between her ears that the problem was.
Right. Yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah, I do a lot of direct work with the brain, with brain retraining and with brain blood flow and brain waves and all this kind of thing is a part of my work. And these are the kind of things where the brain really begins to shape itself based on what we're thinking and what we're saying to ourselves and the habits we're repeating. I mean, that's how it does it. And it's the amazing thing is your experience with that, how quickly the brain will change if you let it know there's another perspective I'd like you to take. And the brain will often say, I can do that. But we have to give it permission. That was a great suggestion, and I hope our audience is writing some of these suggestions down as we go along, because that's one you can try on anytime.
It is. It's easy for us. In any relationship over time, we can move into spells of negativity, and negativity can get a stranglehold on the relationship. What your story represents is the reminder that we are not victims of negativity, that we really can change our malleable brains and introduce a more positive kind of perspective that's kind of like priming the pump. If we can trust the process and remind ourselves of these more constructive, creative, positive things, they begin to have a life of their own. And that momentum is so much more constructive.
Very definitely, definitely. And, you know, I know that the two of you work with hundreds and have worked with thousands of individuals, influencing them in very positive ways. And I'm wondering, in your experience, could you share what your sense is like nowadays is kind of one of the things that kind of comes up over and over is something that really blocks this kind of flow. You've alluded to it probably in what you've said already, but is there something that stands out to you like, wow, there it is again?
In terms of things that are obstacles to a healthy, happy relationship?
Exactly, exactly.
Right, yeah, I do think that some of the things we've discussed are true. I do think boredom comes into play, as we said. I do think that getting into patterns of negativity can come into play. I think in relationships today, given the evolution in our culture about what constitutes an enduring relationship or marriage, the rules have radically changed from the day when marriage was more a kind of a contractual relationship that didn't have to do with intimacy and expectations related to emotional closeness and satisfaction. The standards for a happy relationship have gone up some as people want more from a relationship. And I think in that regard, there's a lot of romanticism that becomes one of the first obstacles that leads to what some have talked about in terms of serial monogamy or serial relationships, where we get addicted to that in-love feeling. And being addicted to the in-love feeling, we love that period of time when we're infatuated with each other, when the starry-eyed, emotional fireworks are going off in a relationship.
Right.
And struggle when things settle into routines and familiarity. We get habituated to one another, and we find that spark is no longer just readily available to us. And I think that's one of those crossroad moments in a relationship. We experience it a first time in any kind of significant relationship, but we can say after nearly 41 years of marriage now, that there are points in time all along the way where that challenge confronts us again as to whether we will give into dissatisfaction because the spark's not there, or take specific steps that reflect our awareness of that and use it as a crossroads moment to build new opportunities for growth, to deepen the relationship rather than walk away. I think a lot of people walk away from a relationship when it gets more complicated instead of recognizing it as this golden opportunity to dig in together and to take that relationship to the next level.
Right, right.
Well, time, you were asking about obstacles that we hear a lot. One, I guess the first one is time. We don't have time, and especially with younger couples who have maybe a family and they have a career and they have their volunteer service, and life gets really, really busy, and it's easy for the relationship to take a back seat because you just don't have time for it. And the reality is you've got to make time for it. I never wanted to be at a stage where we were in the empty nest and we had our kids were no longer at home, and looking across the table and seeing a stranger. I didn't want that for us. And so we really worked at that, but it did take work.
It's always easy because I do think there's a tendency when it relates to time for us to eliminate the margins from our lives, to so fill every hour, every waking hour of our lives that there's no time left. And so we might say our relationship's a priority, but our time management is demonstrating that we haven't really counted on it as a high value item that's going to get quality time.
And then the second thing is we hear couples say they're in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the word boredom. And you do know that there's been research in recent years about the impact of boredom on a relationship.
Right.
And actually do more damage than conflict. And
the counterpart to that keeping a sense of adventure injected into the relationship, stretching and growing and taking risks together. The adventurous side of life can inject energy and attraction emotionally and physically, and those are really powerful forces for good.
Yeah, so that's the opposite of boredom. That's the way you deal with the boredom in the relationship. And we'd like to say life is an adventure. And several years ago, I realized that for myself, I tended to get sort of negative just about life in a habitual way. It wasn't really that I didn't like life. It was just this sort of knee-jerk reaction to say no, or I have to think about it, or whatever. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try something new. I'm going to live with a yes on my lips first, and then consider, rather than a no, because a lot of times when it started out no, it never did get back around to yes.
Right.
And it was really amazing the difference that made. And again, we're talking attitude, but the difference it made in my life and in our relationship.
Yeah, you touch on something that's kind of a favorite area of mine, where couples, and I've done it myself, where your focus is, there's something wrong with the relationship or whatever. And the total reframe, when I would stop and ask myself, well, how might it be that I'm looking at this relationship that makes it look wrong? And suddenly I feel empowered to make a change in myself. And it goes right back to what you started with, which is how you have to really be committed to be clear and take good care of yourself. And that's a big part of taking care of the relationship. And if I can recognize, well, maybe the way that the glasses I'm walking around with is what's wrong. The relationship might be fine and amenable to change, but I need to change my point of view.
Yeah, right.
One of the things I have been in my career, I've been a pastor for many years, and in the churches we serve, as you might imagine, we included couple relationship ministries, opportunities for married couples and other couples to continue to grow and enrich the relationship. We started this kind of date night, once a month date night, where especially young adults, couples were encouraged to come to church, drop off their kids. We provided childcare free of charge. We gave them a brief kind of introduction to some relationship-oriented topic with a sheet that had some exercise.
Oh my goodness! I want to see this in the headlines of a paper.
Yeah.
That is such a great idea.
Set them off. And one of the things that came from the experiences immediate was they came back after the experience and said, oh my goodness, we didn't realize how long it had been since we'd done anything more than shop talk and small talk about just making life work. And this gave us an opportunity to actually be knee to knee, checking in on our relationship and talking about us. So when it comes to time and talking about quality time, small talk shop talk is not adequate to really cultivating those sinews of deeper love and shared life.
Which is also an example of how just having a date night every week isn't enough. It's what you do with that date night that makes a difference. If you're just going to simply go out, the two of you, and have a great fight because you don't want to do that in front of the kids, or you're just going to continue the shop talk, small talk, you have to pick up the kids here, the refrigerator needs to be fixed, when are we going to pay this bill, that sort of thing, that's missing the point.
Yeah.
Learning to talk with each other heart to heart and sharing not only facts and your what you think, but also your feelings
your wants
and your wants.
your shared desires, and your dreams and hopes, your memories, and affirmations, encouragement. These things that build the rope of love that holds us at the center is really important.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Listen, you guys, I am so aware how the time has just flown by. I could easily talk to you guys for another couple of hours here, and I know there'd be a lot more to share. And I want to remind the viewing audience that go to Greg and Priscilla's website, and you can get a lot more information about what they're doing and things that you might be doing. Also, I want to give you an opportunity to share what your gift is for the audience today at this point.
Thanks, Alan. The website is bettermarriages.org, and that website has articles and tips and a couple exercises, conversation starters, videos, things that support couples. But our gift is, you want to tell them about that?
Yeah, it's a book resource, ebook called Pressure Cooker Partners. We're aware that stress is a huge factor in couple relationships. So Pressure Cooker Partners provides insight into how stress impacts the relationship and steps we can take to deal with stress in our relationship together.
Because we all have stress.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And that's a wonderful gift. So the audience knows right after this interview, you're going to see a place where you can click on a link, and it will move you forward to where you'll be able to get this very generous gift. And that sounds extremely worthwhile. So thank you both again for that gift, and thank you for being with me today and sharing of yourself so beautifully. I can understand why you have such a great following, and why so many people are grateful to the work you have done for them and their relationships. And I know that this is spilling over into the families in marvelous ways. So again, thank you for the work you're doing on the planet.
Thank you. And thank you for putting this summit together, this mastery series. It's what a gift.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're a part of it, and it's been very fulfilling to me. And so I again appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing more of you guys, and for us continuing to be able to connect. And I want to thank all the audience that has joined with us today, and hope you'll join us for the other aspects of the series. And so in conclusion, I just want to say that I'm Alan Darbonne, and I want to remind you each that the planet really does need your particular kind of love and your particular kind of light to heal itself and to actually be complete. So please just show up with your kindness and speak your truth. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.